So for the bloody skulls, I'm using a colour called Scarlet Red. It's a Vallejo game colour. And you can kind of see here the difference. So on this side, I have the second coat with the Scarlet Red around the eye sockets. I've kind of tidied them up, and the final colours added there. So unlike on the other side where you can see there was just like the colour blocking, so that's the final effect of the bloody skulls. So this is going to be a fun session. So the detail painting is 99% done on all of these. Basically for the plasma gun, I'll just remove the pin and redo the silver on there, but apart from that, it's finished. But the other two models are detail painted, so now we get to the weathering. And so the plan is to first off use AK's medium rust in a bigger area, and then once that's dried or almost dried, I'll use dark rust within the medium rust to kind of give it a two-tone texture, but in a smaller area because it's a much darker colour. So that's how we're going to do it. Now for this type of work I prefer to use a sponge, but I've pretty much run out of all my sponges. I need to order some new ones. So what I've got left is this little sponge stick thing, very fancy on its own little handle. Usually I just use sponge by itself. And you can see that I've kind of torn up the edge and like it was a straight line. I don't want that kind of straightness. Now a lot of people would use a wet palette for this sort of thing, but going to come out. Yes, no, it's not. Okay. So yeah, a lot of people would use a wet palette, but I am not, as I think I've mentioned a few times now, not a fan of wet palettes. I get mold issues here in Australia with the heat. I don't know whether other countries like colder European countries, they don't have the same sort of problems maybe. Don't go too far, I'll be needing a lot of you. So we'll start on the main model itself, and I'm going to start, let's get a little bit. So you don't want to paint with this, right? So you don't want it too heavy, but you also kind of want to contain the area, which is why I'm using the part on the chisel. So the idea will be that there'll be more damage on the bottom part of the model than on the top. I may end up not using the sponge for the dark rust because there may not be enough control. We'll see how we feel about that. So yes, there'll definitely be more wear in the lower parts than in the upper parts as such. But also, for those of you that have watched all of this from start to finish, you'll know that there were a few issues with the print. For example, here on this left shoulder pad, that was basically reprinted and added. And so what I'm going to do, the plan is that I will also do a lot of like rust and damage on areas where there were actually issues, just kind of highlighting that fact. Anyway, let's not distract too much from the feet. But yeah, I'm eager to get work on the textured effects for the base of this, but I didn't want to do that work and then put like rust paint on top of it. So hence why I've decided it's time to do this now. Okay, what else I'll probably want to have some. And there. And there. So a lot of it is on the edges. Be disappointed in the sense that the video I just did of me doing all this AK medium rust, it seems like the video didn't record. So yeah, that's a little bit annoying. It's about 20 minutes or so of me painting the medium rust. So anyway, I'll come back in a while when that's dried a bit and do the dark rust. But yeah, apologies for not being able to show you the painting of that because it all seems to have crashed and burnt on me. Okay, we have had some technical issues with this head cam. So apologies for the vision that's been lost. So I'm basically doing the weathering effects now with the AK medium rust and dark rust. So I do the medium rust first and in the bigger area, and then I've gone over it later. So for the medium rust I used a sponge applicator, whereas for the dark rust, to get a little bit more control, I've just done like a dry brushing technique with a brush. And yeah, so this is both edges, which means now that I'll be able to start working on the base itself. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Now unfortunately all the video of me doing that's been lost. Now with the talons, basically I've got the medium rust on here, but I haven't done the dark rust. So I'm going to start doing that now, and I'm just crossing my fingers that, yeah, this actually, the recording continues going and everything works. Wet. Some paint out. So it's like dry brushing technique. You don't want a brush that's full of paint. And you don't want to press really hard. Although having said that, like I went much lighter on the base model, whereas this Talon, the whole thing is basically a melee weapon. So it's, obviously going to get a lot more damage than like barely done anything on the plasma gun, for example. The idea with the two-tone is to try and give a little bit more dimension to the rust rather than it just all being the one colour. Alright. I'm going to go hard in the areas where there were actual 3D print damage. So like for example on the model around where I had to reprint a part, there are a couple of lines there from that. I've gone heavy with the rust effect around there because it just makes sense that that is a damaged part and there would be more kind of rust and damage around that area. So we're 4 minutes 30 seconds, and nearly come up on the 5-minute mark, so that's good. Still recording, obviously what we want. Okay. So you can kind of see the difference to just having the dark rust versus the medium and dark. So apologies if I've said this before and you get to hear it, because I'm really not sure what I've said that has been lost and what hasn't, but I was talking a bit before about how doing the weathering and texturing effects is a little bit zen, in the sense that you kind of you spend all this time getting the model, really detailed and looking kind of pristine. And then when you're doing this, you're kind of letting go of that a bit. But once again, as I was saying, I'm not sure whether it survived or not. When you do your detail painting, that's kind of like how the model just walked out of the factory floor, like it's how it was built, and what it ended up looking like when it comes out manufactured. Whereas the aim of these sort of texturing and discoloring is to make it look like it's something that's been through battles, that has seen action. Let's put there for a sec while I get some more paint. And yeah, so that's the whole idea of these processes at the end, is to like weather it, and it's seen action and you want it to kind of reflect that. So I'm probably going to do a little black as well. I still think it's a bit too shiny and bright. Not a lot, but a bit. Yeah, where is it? There. Figured out the final position, but it will probably be raised up a bit, I think. So we want some on this edge, because that part's more exposed. Probably be something like that. I think will be the final position. Okay, well, we're coming up on 10 minutes, and thankfully it seems like it's still recording, so that's very encouraging. Okay, so that's the two AKs done. So I don't think I want to do any black on the base of the model itself. That's probably going to be left as is. And I've done very, very little weathering at all on the plasma gun. Basically, the plasma gun stays back and shoots, whereas when he's engaged in melee combat, he would be like more turning to use his talons forward in that sense. So, you know, that side isn't going to get as much hand-to-hand combat as this side is. So. So it's definitely going to bring the overall colour palette down to a darker area. Okay, so it's probably going to be about another 20 minutes or so of painting to do all that black. I'm very encouraged that the head cam is still recording, but I probably will leave it there and continue on with the black. And then when we're finished, I'll set this arm in place. With the plasma gun, I just need to remove the pin and do a second coat of silver on those silver tanks, and then that's pretty much good as well. So now I'm going to work on the base. So I'll take the talons off, which should be dry, or majority dry. Put them aside. And for the base, I am going to use this Vallejo product, which is basically what they call a textured effects, FX for short. And for this stuff, it's got actual product in it, so it's not really suitable for brushes. So what I find works the best is a small trowel. Get a tissue ready to clean up a bit as needed. So the aim for today is to work, separate it a bit, work on the top around the feet especially. Once that's done, then I'll be able to work on the sides. It's kind of like if you've worked on icing a cake before. It's a very similar sort of product and feel to that. So it doesn't go on smooth like paint. And I will be putting a bit on the model as well, because like the model is walking through this this world, and so it's picked up some of this, like on the left knee is where my first thought, oh yeah, I'll put some on there as well, like maybe it'd kneel down at some point. So when I printed out this this base, I kind of split it up into four parts due to the size of the model, and there were some areas like here, for example, where there's not a smooth transition, shall we say. But that's fine, because this is also filling in a sense as well. So, you know, like I didn't bother with doing anything about layer lines or anything like that, because this is just going to get covered over with the actual textured effect. Still, I was happy to have like ridge lines and that in it, because it does make it look more natural. Like, so I plan to like follow those and take advantage of those, like here, for example, in this channel, because otherwise it just looks too flat and plain and you know, too much like an industrial sort of flooring surface rather than like he's out in the world. And like on the smaller scale models, like I really like the base that I had with this first Infernal Bruiser, and I did put a couple of stones on the rock. This is just like a small rock, that I put PVA glue on, and then sprinkle it over and it sticks on the glue. That's kind of like how you do small models. So I did think about, oh, maybe I should get a few stones from out in the garden and do something kind of similar. But in the end I decided against it. I think best to just kind of stick to the textured effect look, and yeah, that will do fine. Just walking through a muddy ground basically is the kind of look that it's going for. I do really like this Vallejo product. I did a video recently of a 50th birthday present I gave to one of my best friends, and in that I used a sand version of this, and I thought it turned out really good. Like, it really does have the texture as well as the color. You know, you could just paint this the same sort of brown color, no problem, but it just wouldn't have the same raised areas and texture to it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I think it's an excellent product. I was looking at one of our hobby sites where I buy stuff from time to time. I forget if it was Army Painter or a different manufacturer, but there was another site where they had a lot of these types of textured effects and all sorts of various funky stuff, and I was somewhat tempted, but they were like $20 a pot and they had a lot of them, so I was like, yeah, it's very easy to spend a lot of money on these sorts of products, but oh well, that's all part of the hobby. That is looking pretty good though, I must say. Definitely looking muddy. So we'll put a little bit on the leg and the left leg, even though, like I said, I do plan to put a fair bit more on the other side. That's enough. You don't want to overdo it, but you know, walking through a muddy field, you are going to get mud on yourself. That's just reality. going. We've hit the 10-minute mark and it's still recording. It hasn't crashed on me, so I'm happy about that. So there have been some teething problems with this new webcam setup. It wasn't registering the camera, like it was giving me an error. And so I tried to change it. Like, this is basically a USB-C cable that runs through to a hub at the back, like a dock, and plugs into that. And so I thought, oh well, what if I get a straight USB-C to USB-C cable? Trying not to get too nerdy and technical on you in case you're not into IT. Like, I've been a help desk person for a long time, so you know, I tend to just eat, sleep and breathe IT. But yes, anyway, long story short, I tried a USB-C cable plugging straight into the side of the laptop. And then it didn't detect the blasted head cam at all, so I've had to go back to the dock. I was like, well, maybe the dock was part of the issue, and doesn't seem to have been. So yeah, the joys of technology, as they say. Sometimes it's just a pain in the proverbial body part. Alright, so I'm not going to bother spreading mud on the back legs or the back part of the body, because you know the idea is that he's walking forward and has picked up stuff as he's gone. So the back part of the model would be reasonably sheltered from all that. Maybe I should just record the front where there's more light. So you can kind of lift it a bit, which gives it a really nice textured effect. Okay, I think I'll do the video more on the front where the better light is, so you can see what I'm doing. And then when I get around to that side, I'll probably leave the video there. Really happy with the effect of this though. Like, mud effect, you want it to look muddy, and you know, by goodness do I think that looks muddy. So I'm going really heavy on this side, like I said, as opposed to that side. It's like at some point he is kneeled down in the mud, and the mud is just kind of caked on things. Sorry, model, not sorry. But that's basically the difference between a model, you know, that you do where it looks pristine, it looks all clean and the bright colors and everything's popping, You know, you might even say more like a cartoony animated style versus something that's more in like the tabletop sort of universe that I do a lot of my time in, without mentioning any brands, because basically I don't want to get sued. You know, this design was called an Infernal Bruiser, and I'm keeping things at that, shall we say. Like I don't call it anything else, because if I called it a name that was like copyright, you know, I could get into a lot of trouble, and I'm just a very small channel and I don't want that. So yeah, say no more. Infernal Bruiser, that's what it is. Need to be even more careful with the crawler model. Like just a crawler. That's all it's called in the design, and we shall not call it anything else. Certainly nothing that infringes on anyone's copyright. This at least looks a little bit different than the commercial, shall we say. You know, I got to be very careful what I say here. This looks very different than the commercially available model. Yes. But, you know, this is a good time, I guess, having said all that, to talk about the economics of 3D printing. Like, if you were to purchase a model, like, say, oh, I don't know, just at random, picking a manufacturer, like, you know, shall we randomly say Games Workshop and their Warhammer stuff? Not saying that this is Warhammer related in any way, but, you know, like a model to purchase their plastic kit would, in Australia, you know, something of the, not the scale, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about like a tabletop model, like something like of this scale, but in their universe, from their plastic kits, would easily cost you $200, right? In Australian currency, probably more, but let's just run with $200. Whereas I forget exactly what I paid for this STL, this digital file, but this person has made this model available and I purchased it for, let's just say $15 as an example. And I think the figures aren't that far off, and if they are, they're, you know, in my favor off. They're, you know, underdoing it. But yeah, basically you can buy a digital version of something that another, you know, whoever the game manufacturer is, not saying names, you know, it's for like a tenth of the price, basically. And then once you've purchased your 3D printer, you know, like the bulk of the purchase price for 3D printing is in the actual printer itself. Filament, admittedly, with like, you know, the COVID and all the supply disruptions and all that, it has gone up a bit. So when I got into 3D printing, I could purchase a roll of PLA for like $22 a roll, and I could go to my Sunlu site, which is the PLA that I buy is all this Sunlu stuff, and they would do various deals. Sometimes I have bought like buy 10 rolls, pay for 6 when I needed a lot of filament, but for the majority of time I've used their deal of buy 6, pay for 4. So they're a supplier that knows that the price of their product makes a difference, and I kind of got to respect that, really. So I've bought the Sunlu stuff pretty much ever since I got into printing, and now their prices have had to go up like all other filament prices have gone up, but even so they still have kept their deals. So like with this, the Sunlu's price may be like $32, $34. It's much more than it was when I got into printing, but they still do the, buy 6, pay for 4 deal. So it still works out at a reasonably competitive, like $23 a reel price of filament. So for 3D printing, the expense is all in the printer initial purchase. Once you have your printer, even though it's more expensive than it used to be, it's still pretty darn cheap. Okay, so we're in the back areas now, and it's a bit darker and harder to show you, I think. So I might leave the video there. And yeah, with what I was saying, like digital models and 3D printing, I think is a very cost economical way to get into wargaming, and you don't even have to be into wargaming. I certainly am, and I do that, but you could just be into these models themselves, and it's still a great economical kind of hobby, I think. I mean, when I think of the hobbies that I've had in the past, I mean, I was into scuba diving, and ended up being a scuba dive instructor, which, given the fact that I live in Australia, is probably not that shocking to say, because, it's a great place for diving. But I think of the, like, $3,000 or so that I think I spent, and this is even like more than a decade ago, mind you, and it was still $3,000 on my scuba dive equipment. So compared to that sport, this is cheap, and even then compared to my current other sport, which I do play, of golf, I think the golf sets can easily set you back $1,500 to $2,000 Australian. I'm not sure about overseas. You probably get them pretty cheap in some Thailand and Asian areas, but in a lot of the kind of more Western countries, you probably pay even more. So in that respect, 3D printing, it does have an initial outlay for the printer. I'm certainly not going to rush out and buy a H2D from Bamboo, even though I kind of see the benefit now, and like having a proper AMS and the 2 heads and all that. Like, I would like to have that. I didn't buy the AMS because of environmental reasons, so much wastage, but now I've since kind of learnt how you actually can configure that properly to not have so much wastage. Basically, you just print the interface layer in a different color. my point in all of this is that I don't actually think 3D printing is an outrageous expense for a hobby. Not like it perhaps was in years gone past. The price of filament has significantly gone up, even in the time just that I've been into 3D printing, but compared to scuba diving and golf, which are just happen to be the two hobbies that I have had myself personally that I can talk to, my own costs, I think that the cheap price of 3D printers, if anything, is getting cheaper over time. Not the H2D specifically, because that's, in Australia at least, an expensive beast, but like overall the 3D printing technology is getting cheaper, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I would encourage anyone that was interested in sort of doing this, to look, shop, maybe wait for Black Friday or certain sales, but not my bamboo printer, but my very, very first longer printer, Longer LK5 Pro. I purchased for like 2/3 of the retail in a Black Friday sale. That's what initially got me into 3D printing, was like, wow, I can get that at a really good price. So so I went for it. Admittedly, this Bamboo A1, I think I paid full price, but you know, by then I was pretty obsessed with 3D printing, and the advantages of this machine are pretty huge. Like, it's basically a set and forget print, whereas with my longer printer, and I think I've spoken a little bit about this before in the past, the hobby of that printer was the 3D printing itself, not the painting. I'm all about the painting and the working on the models. I don't really care about the 3D printing in the sense that I want to ship it to the 3D printer and I want the thing to just print. And the Bamboo does that. Whereas the longer, it was like you needed to tweak it and you needed to do this and that. And the Creality, the second printer I had, was kind of even more so. It was at best 50%, but I was constantly having to pull it apart, undo it, clean it all up, put it back together, and then try and print again. And you know, this is just my personal opinion. I'm not bagging on Longer or Creality, but the reason why I was very happy to pay full price for the Bamboo was because of the reviews, and the reviews turned out to be accurate, and the fact that you can send a print to it and it just prints. Anyway, that is the top of the base, so I'll do the sides of the bases later because it's kind of hard to do the sides without holding it, and I don't really want to hold it where I've just put the mud on it. So I'll let that all dry. This stuff isn't like paint which dries in half an hour. This stuff does take a little bit longer to dry, so once that is all dried, then I'll do the sides, somewhat similar like I said at the start. If you've ever done any cake, like icing, it's very, very similar sort of product to that, which is why brushes don't work with it at all. It's just like a little trowel. But that will then be finished and we can get on to our crawler, which, yay, has not had a lot of love, I must admit. I just kind of, you know, as soon as I started working on this model, I was like, oh, it's so cool, I want to continue working on the model. So, you know, and you got to support that kind of passion and just go with it. So I definitely have focused on this model, but we're going to be getting to the crawler soon.